The GPS announced, "You have arrived," as we pulled up to my mother-in-law Diana's sprawling colonial home. My 3 children, exhausted from the 8-hour drive, perked up at the sight of the holiday decorations covering the front lawn. Even after 6 years, Diana still went overboard trying to create the perfect family image, at least for the relatives she considered worthy. "Look, Mom," Sophie, my youngest, pressed her face against the window. "Grandma got a bounce house." I exchanged a glance with my husband, Mark, in the rearview mirror. We hadn't heard anything about a bounce house. Then again, Diana hadn't exactly been forthcoming with the party details when she called 2 weeks ago, insisting we make the long drive for Thanksgiving this year. "Remember what we talked about," I said softly to the kids as we unloaded the car. "If Grandma says anything that makes you uncomfortable, we tell you or Dad right away." 12-year-old Marcus finished. He'd grown more protective of his younger sisters since last Christmas, when Diana had conspicuously given all the blood grandchildren special gifts, leaving my 3 adopted children with dollar store coloring books. Mark squeezed my hand as we approached the front door. "Mom promised she'd behave this time, Emily. She knows this is her last chance." I wanted to believe him. We'd adopted our children, Marcus, 10-year-old Lily, and 6-year-old Sophie, when they were babies. Diana had seemed accepting at first, even attending the adoption ceremonies. But over the years, her true feelings had begun to seep out in subtle jabs and accidental oversights that had become increasingly obvious. The door swung open before we could knock. Diana stood there in a perfectly pressed autumn-themed dress, her signature pearl necklace gleaming. "Mark, darling." She embraced her son, then gave me a cool nod. "Emily, and the children." Her pause before acknowledging my kids was slight but deliberate. The house was packed when we entered. Diana's other children had already arrived with their families, Mark's sister Rebecca with her 3 natural children, as Diana loved to emphasize, and his brother Tom with his newborn son. The smell of turkey and pumpkin pie filled the air, mixing with the sound of children playing and adults chatting. "The kids' table is in the sunroom," Diana announced, gesturing vaguely toward the back of the house. "And adults are in the dining room." We followed her through the house, my children clutching the handmade place cards they'd spent hours creating. That's when I noticed something off. The dining room table, traditionally set for all family members over 10, was already full. Rebecca's older children sat proudly among the adults, while unfamiliar faces occupied what should have been our seats. "Mom," Mark frowned, "where are we supposed to sit?" Diana busied herself adjusting a centerpiece. "Oh, I hope you don't mind, but I invited the Petersons. You remember them from church? Their grandchildren are visiting, and I thought it would be nice to have some traditional families join us." My heart sank as I watched Marcus's face fall. At 12, he should have been at the adult table like Rebecca's son Tyler. Instead, Diana had relegated all my children to the rickety card table in the sunroom, along with the toddlers. Traditional families? I kept my voice level, aware of the curious looks from other guests. "What exactly does that mean, Diana?" She turned, her smile sharp as cut glass. "Well, dear, I just thought it would be more comfortable for everyone this way. After all, the Petersons' grandchildren are their real grandchildren." The room went silent. Even Rebecca, who usually backed her mother without question, looked uncomfortable. "Mom," Mark's voice cracked with anger. "You can't." "It's fine," I interrupted, though it was anything but fine. I could see Sophie's lower lip trembling and Lily's fingers crumpling her carefully made place card. "Kids, why don't we go check out that bounce house?" As soon as they were out of earshot, I turned back to Diana. 6 years, I said quietly. For 6 years, I've watched you chip away at my children's sense of belonging. Every holiday, every family gathering, you find new ways to remind them they're not real family to you. Diana's perfect hostess mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the contempt beneath. "I'm simply being honest, Emily. Blood is blood. You can't expect me to pretend. Like you've been pretending all these years." I reached for my purse, fingers closing around the envelope I've been carrying for months, waiting for the right moment. "About your own family's blood." Diana's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" I pulled out the envelope. "Because when Mark decided to do one of those ancestry DNA tests last spring, we found some very interesting connections. Would you like me to share them with everyone here?" The perfectly arranged Thanksgiving decorations suddenly seemed to mock us, all those happy family photos on the walls. The family is forever sign above the fireplace, the elaborate place cards marking who Diana deemed worthy of her table. Emily, she hissed, this is hardly the time. You're right, I cut her off. It's not the time. It hasn't been the time for 6 years, as you've systematically made my children feel like outsiders. But since you're so concerned about real family today. I looked around the room at the gathered relatives, at the Petersons sitting awkwardly in our seats, at Mark's siblings who had watched their mother's behavior for years without objection. The truth in this envelope was about to change everything. And as I heard my children's laughter floating in from outside, my beautiful, strong, resilient children who deserved so much better, I knew it was finally time. Diana's perfectly manicured hands trembled as she reached for the envelope. Whatever you think you found. What I found, I said firmly, is that Mark's DNA test showed no genetic match to Tom or Rebecca. None. The collective gasp in the room was almost theatrical. Rebecca's wine glass froze halfway to her lips, while Tom stood up so quickly his chair scraped against the hardwood floor. That's impossible. Diana's voice had risen an octave. There must be some mistake. I thought so too. I continued pulling out the test results. So we did more research. Would you like to tell everyone about William Peterson, Diana? The man whose grandchildren are sitting in our seats right now. The color drained from Diana's face as she stared at the Petersons, the lovely older couple she'd invited to fill out the table. Mr. Peterson looked particularly uncomfortable, his eyes fixed on his plate. I don't. Diana started, but I wasn't finished. William Peterson was your first husband, wasn't he? The man you were married to when Mark was born. His birth certificate listed Peterson as his father, though you had it changed when you married John 6 months later. Mark's stepfather, the man he called Dad his whole life, had passed away 3 years ago. He'd never known the truth either. Tom and Rebecca came along after you married John, I continued, making them Mark's half-siblings, which means those DNA results make perfect sense. Rebecca stood up, her chair scraping back. Mom, is this true? Diana's perfect hostess facade cracked completely. It was complicated, she whispered. He wasn't ready to be a father. When I met John, he promised to give us a real family, a respectable name. So you erased William Peterson from Mark's life, I said, changed his birth certificate, changed his name, and pretended it never happened. Just like you've spent 6 years trying to erase my children from this family. The irony was almost too perfect. Diana, who'd spent years preaching about blood ties and real family, had built her entire family image on a carefully constructed lie. Mark? Diana turned to her son, tears threatening to ruin her perfect makeup. Darling, I was young. I was trying to protect you. Like you're protecting my children? Mark's voice was steady but cold. By making them eat at a card table while their cousins sit with the adults. By inviting strangers to take their places. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. Diana, perhaps we should go. No, I said firmly. Please stay. After all, you're Mark's biological grandfather. And since Diana is so concerned about blood ties, I'm sure she'll want you to know your great-grandchildren. My children, whom she's been treating as outsiders for years. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, broken only by the distant sound of children playing outside. The perfectly arranged Thanksgiving table now seemed like a stage set for a drama no one had expected to perform. Tom was the first to speak. All these years, Mom, all your talk about family legacy and blood ties was a lie, Rebecca finished, her voice barely a whisper. Just like the way you've been treating Marcus, Lily, and Suffy. Diana sank into her chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. I just wanted a perfect family, she whispered. When William left, everyone talked. Small towns, you know how they are. John offered me respectability, a chance to start over. And that's exactly what you denied my children, I said softly. The chance to be accepted without questions about their origins. The chance to be loved unconditionally. Mark walked to the window, watching our children play outside with their cousins, all of them laughing, unbothered by the adults' complicated definitions of family. You know what's ironic, Mom, he said, still watching the children. Those kids out there, they don't care about DNA tests or birth certificates. They just love each other. Maybe it's time we learn from them. Diana dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed napkin. I never meant. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I finished for her, but you did. Every time you separated my children from their cousins. Every time you made them feel less than. Every time you used the word real like it was a weapon. The turkey was getting cold, the perfect Thanksgiving dinner forgotten in the wake of long-buried truths. But something was shifting in the room, something that felt like the beginning of healing. "I'd like to hear about William," Mark said suddenly, turning to Mr. Peterson. "If you're willing to tell me." And as his biological grandfather began to speak, I slipped outside to check on my children. It was time to rearrange some seating assignments. I found my children by the bounce house, their earlier disappointment temporarily forgotten in the joy of play. Marcus was helping Sophie climb up while Lily took turns jumping with her cousins. No distinction between real and adopted in their innocent fun. "Mom," Sophie waved, her face flushed with excitement. "Are we having dinner soon?" "Yes, sweetheart," I smiled. "And there are going to be some changes to the seating arrangements." When we returned inside, the dining room had transformed. The adults had pushed together several tables, creating one long surface that stretched from the formal dining room into the sunroom. Gone was the separation between adult and children's tables, between real and adopted family members. Diana stood awkwardly by her chair, watching as Mark and Mr. Peterson worked together to rearrange place settings. Her perfect Thanksgiving layout was in shambles, but something more authentic was taking its place. "I've been thinking," she said softly as I approached, "about what you said, about unconditional love." She twisted her pearl necklace, a nervous habit I'd never seen before. "When William left, I thought if I could just create the perfect family image, no one would ever hurt us again. I didn't realize I'd become the one doing the hurting." Marcus walked past us, carrying his handmade place card. Diana reached out, tentatively touching his arm. Would you like to sit next to me, Marcus?" My son looked at me, then at his grandmother. "Will you tell me about when my dad was my age?" Diana's eyes welled up. "I'd like that very much." The Thanksgiving dinner that followed was nothing like Diana's carefully planned production. The turkey was lukewarm. The seating arrangement was chaotic, and children's laughter mixed freely with adult conversation. Mr. Peterson shared stories about young Mark that had us all alternating between laughter and tears. Tom and Rebecca's children peppered their newly discovered grandfather with questions, while my children listened intently to family history that was now, undeniably, their own. "You know," Diana said during dessert, watching Sophie share her pumpkin pie with Rebecca's youngest, "I always thought family was something you had to control, to perfect." But looking at them, she gestured to the mixed group of children, impossible to distinguish between adopted and biological. "They already know what took me 60 years to learn." "And what's that?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "That love doesn't need verification. It just needs room to grow." After dinner, as the children returned to the bounce house and the adults settled into comfortable conversations, Diana disappeared upstairs. She returned carrying a dusty photo album I'd never seen before. "These are from before," she said, placing it on the table. "When Mark was little, when William was still." She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. "I think it's time we had all our family history out in the open. No more hiding, no more pretending." The photos showed a younger Diana with a man who had Mark's smile. There were birthday parties, beach trips, moments of ordinary family life that had been buried beneath years of reinvention. "Next Thanksgiving," Diana said suddenly, "I'd like to do things differently." She looked around at her expanded family, biological, adopted, step, and chosen. "Maybe we could start new traditions, ones that celebrate how we came together, rather than where we came from." Mark squeezed her hand. "I'd like that, Mom." Later that night, as we packed up the car for the long drive home, Diana pulled me aside. "Emily," she said, holding out a small box. "I want you to have these." Inside were her pearl earrings, the ones she always said would go to her first granddaughter. "For Sophie," she said, "when she's older." "And these?" She handed me another box containing a matching bracelet. "For Lily." As we drove away, my children already dozing in the back seat, Mark reached for my hand. "You know what's funny?" he said. "Mom spent all those years trying to hide the truth about our family, but revealing it finally made us feel like a real family." I looked in the rearview mirror at our sleeping children, our perfect, beautiful, chosen children. "Maybe that's because real family isn't about who shares your blood," I said. "It's about who shares your heart." The truth had shattered Diana's carefully constructed image of a perfect family, But from those pieces, something more beautiful had emerged. A family bound not by blood or birth certificates, but by love, acceptance, and the courage to embrace all the complicated, messy parts of our shared story. And next Thanksgiving, well, I hear Diana's already planning to get a bigger bounce house. One with room for everyone.